Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It is Bets and Banter, and we are talking UFC Vegas 92. It's Edson Jr. Barboza taking on Lerone Murphy. It's a featherweight main event. It's going down at the Apex Center in Las Vegas, Nevada, USA, and we've got a lot of great fights to break down. We got a great card to break down. We got the sharpest chat in the game assembling as we speak, so I want to thank you all for being here, and we got our guest of the week, our very sharp friend, Just Win Baby, back in the building. How you doing, my friend?
So, bro, good to be back at it. Coming off chronic combat with Guru and TB. Stayed up till 1 a.m. like a dick. Never again. So I'm feeling it, man. Need some sleep, but I'm here. I'm ready to go.
Hell yeah, man. Two friends of the show, and it's great to have a card to break down. We got Emily Ducote and Vanessa Demopolous going to kick off the card. And do you want to start us off, Rich, or you want me to kick us off?
Oh, that's nice of you. No, you can kick it off. I don't want to do that.
All right. Sounds like a plan. So first fight of the night, we've got Vanessa Demopolous, and she is an underdog. What's new there? She's been an underdog perennially throughout her UFC run, but she has overperformed expectations certainly throughout the years. If you look, sometimes people think, hey, maybe she doesn't deserve these decisions. I'm looking at the Tapology picks, and I'm surprised to see 62% of voters are siding with Vanessa Demopolous. That's certainly not reflected by the betting lines this weekend. I'm looking at the prices right now, and what I'm seeing on Vanessa Demopolous is plus 300 on DraftKings Sportsbook. So big plus money numbers on Vanessa Demopolous. I will say this does fit a system for me, right? And I will say the system is, Rich, it's a simple one. Never fade a stripper in Las Vegas, Nevada. I mean, what are you guys insane? I mean, that's something I won't do, right? Especially not at a huge chalk price. I think we've seen that story come to pass a few times, right? I tried to talk people out of it. They're like, bro, Jinh Frey is better at fighting. You know, she's going to go out there and win. And I was like, it's going to be close. Vanessa has a way about her where she doesn't fuck off. She comes forward. She throws punches. She's willing to get hit in the face very hard and keep trying. She can get knocked down, pull off an armbar from her back. Then I start peeling through the record here, Rich, right? And Emily Ducote is a very talented fighter. We've bet her in the past against the likes of Lupita Godinez. She let us down in that spot, kind of dropped the ball. But against Jessica Penne, just one fight before, she went out there and cashed us a big ticket, delivered in that spot. I think that even may have been a UFC debut. So I was high on Ducote coming into the UFC, but I've sort of been lower on her based on what we've seen so far. She looks all right, but she really hasn't been blowing my hair back. I thought they gave her, a layup finish against Ashley Yoder. Wasn't able to deliver in that spot either. So now I'm looking at a girl who I think is talented, but just hasn't been putting it all together at the UFC level against Vanessa Demopolous, who has more UFC experience. She's kind of a savvy vet at this point. She's not the greatest fighter, right? She lost to Karolina Kowalkiewicz, somebody who's been around longer, who has more tricks of the trade, who has more optics when it comes to winning decisions. But when you're talking about a fighter like Vanessa, I just think that, number one, she's pretty hard to put away with strikes. So I think she's going to be in the fight throwing shots of her own, and she might be there to be hit, but I don't think it's going to be easy to put her away. You follow her to the ground, she's going to be active off of her back with elbows as well as attempts with submissions. So I just don't think it's going to be an easy, girl to cover a huge price against more often than not. But it's also a girl I've had a lot of success betting. I bet her as a dog in all of her recent fights, but the times I bet her big was when she was a bigger dog. When she was a small dog against Karolina Kowalkiewicz, plus 115, I was like, at best, I'm getting meager value, so I bet a half a unit. Against Kanako Murata at plus 300, I was like, how wrong could I be? Let's take the plus 300. Against, who was the other one? Jinh Frey, it was like plus 225. How wrong could you be? And again, we're kind of getting to that pricing with women's MMA, first fight of the night, kind of a low-level fight, I feel. It just seems to me like you'd probably be better off long-term on the dog in these spots. So that's the way I feel about it. I haven't bet any money on this fight. I respect the people that got in early. I think it opened like minus 175, but it's kind of run away, right? It's like plus 275 on Vanessa Demopolous now. So I think that's a little bit out of line. How about you, brother?
Yeah, I think Emily wins. The price is unplayable to me. I'm scared to take props because, like you said, in the Yoda fight, I thought she was going to smash there. I bet some ITD and I can't remember, KO or sub, something like that. And I got burned. So I'm not going back to the well, man. I do think Emily wins. She's got a wrestling base, black belt in BJJ. Better on the feet, more power in her hands. It should be a one-sided squash match. I'd be interested to see who the referee is. Mark Smith, and we might get our finish. Keith Peterson and Vanessa might die. So maybe I'll wait until the bout's just about to start and be forced into some action, but I don't want a part of this, man.
Yeah, fair enough. And my gut feeling is when I'm looking at the Tapology votes, when I'm looking at the line, I kind of just want to stay away from it, right? It's almost like Vanessa Demopolous' secret is out that she goes out there and just robs these decisions. And I think there's a time when that benefits everybody, right? Nobody's betting on it except me. Everybody thinks this girl sucks and she's going to lose. And maybe she does lose, but the money was just as green. I was just as happy with the outcome. And I had even predicated it on the theory that I'm not fading a stripper in Las Vegas. Now, at this point, it seems like it's a public narrative. Like, don't fade Vanessa. Like, she's going to get the decision. And she might just get her ass whooped here because Emily is a better striker. But I don't know. There's just a fire about Vanessa. And, like, she finds ways to win, right? She was having tough fights before and just finds ways to grit it out, land big shots, find submissions. And the one other thing I forgot to note, Elena Lay McFarland, it was a long time ago, right? But the only person to submit Emily Ducote, it was with an armbar. That is like the specialty of Vanessa Demopolous. If you look throughout her career, she has like a triangle, an inverted triangle, something like this. But in terms of just her ground specialty, from the amateurs to the pros, the vast majority of her wins are via armbar. So I do think that's something like that Ducote's got to watch for. I know she's a black belt, but it's like, what if she gets hit with one punch, gets rocked for 1 second, and then gets armbarred? It's like, that's what we always talk about, right? You're a black belt until you get punched in the face. You're a brown belt, and then you get punched in the face again. You're a purple belt, and all the way on down. I think both these women could exchange, and it hasn't been like Emily Ducote is a picture of defense so far in her UFC fights. Even Jessica Penne landed some shots against her. I thought that fight was more competitive than I expected when we bet it. So a couple things to think about, but yeah, Pepe says Ducote doesn't lose this. Hopefully she shouldn't in terms of skill, but I don't know, man. For me, it's like a spot where we've kind of seen this story play out a few times. So I'll wait and see how the market reacts and where the money's at the end of the week and kind of proceed accordingly. That's sometimes I'm a matchup based better. I might be a market better in this one and see how it goes. Next up, my man, we got Alatong Haley taking on Kleydson Rodrigues at 135 pounds. How do you feel about this one, Rich?
I like the Kleydson side. I think he probably finishes as well. I think the ITD is generous for him. I think people are just looking short term, man. He went up to 135 in his last bout against Basharat. No shame in that loss. Basharat, he had the metric advantage. He's been at 135 for a while, smashing it as well, comfortably winning. I think he could be a contender. He has serious jiu-jitsu. And I think he was just outclassed in that fight. It was too much too soon. But then he gets Haley here. And Haley, nothing to write home about, nothing special. He has a lot of things that he does wrong. The things he does well, it's a very short list. Doesn't really have power, doesn't finish fights, doesn't laterally move. When he exits the pocket, he walks straight backwards and he's there to be clipped, especially by a high kick. If, Kleidson's smart enough and he's watched some tape. And Kleidson's on the steroids. He's with, what's his name? Dubronx, training, learning. And people are going to mention the CJ Vergara fight. Yeah, that was obviously something you didn't want to see, but it was his debut in the UFC. It was on a pay-per-view. Vergara is durable as fuck. He put the pace on him. Kleydson tried to finish him early, didn't get it, and paid the price. So I can forgive him for the 2 losses, man. Maybe I'm being naive and I get burnt, but I don't think so. I think Haley is super mid, and Kleidson's going to put it on him and get him out of there, man.
Fair play. I think that there's a couple interesting ways to play this fight. I would be surprised if Alatong Haley was able to finish this fight. I just don't see him as a very prolific or potent finisher at the UFC level. So I did think his decision line was a touch wide at like 3-1. I just think that whatever his money line is, it should be closely correlated with that decision price, I feel. I just think that's a lot of how he wins this fight. When I'm looking at the Kleydson Rodrigues side, I do think that Kleydson Rodrigues is a superior fighter in terms of his skill and technique, but he also hasn't proven very much to me. He beat Shannon Ross with the flying butt. I feel like people forget this. It's one of the greatest clips in UFC history. He goes for a spinning kick. He just jumps, hits him in the head with his butt, and the guy's doing the shakes all over the place. We know Shannon Ross has a tough time in terms of the durability there. The CJ Vergara fight, Vergara is a tricky guy because if you can't finish him, he is a guy that sometimes is hard to look good against. He's gotten hurt, rocked, wobbled before, and then come back and won the fight. He deals with adversity pretty well. So unless you can submit him and like put him in bad positions on the ground, he is a guy that's a little bit more difficult to look good against. And obviously, Kleydson Rodrigues has wanted to go out there and keep the fights on the feet, use his stand-up, mostly bang people out on the feet. He does have one win via submission as well. Just glancing at his record, 2 wins via submission, excuse me, but one in recent memory against somebody with a record on Tapology. So when I'm looking at this fight, man, I do think it's kind of a setup spot. Kleydson, last time out, if you remember, I said he was getting punished. I thought that the UFC was sick and tired of his bullshit with the weight because he had missed weight for a fight. He had Tyra. He was supposed to be matched up with Tyra because he was going to get submitted there. And then instead, he ends up missing weight for that fight. And they were like, oh, okay, you want to be missing weight. Now you're moving up to bantamweight. No more discussions about flyweight. And not only that, but they give him another guy who's like a potent grappler, right? Basharat, that's his A game. He's going to go out there, put you on the ground and embarrass you. So Alatanghe Lee, people have talked about it this week on shows. He's not a guy that goes out there in round 1 and just sticks to a wrestling game plan every time out. Most of the time he's going, should I wrestle? Should I throw some strikes? He's competing on the feet a little bit. He's having nip tuck fights, but unless he breaks the nose of Chad and Hellinger, I think that fight plays out a lot more competitive. Chad kind of had to manage the fight, stay on the outside, couldn't really commit to any strikes or to his grappling because his nose is literally hanging sideways off his face. And I think that that's his best win so far in the UFC for Alatanghe Lee. I just don't really trust what he's bringing to the table. 32 years of age. He does come from a good gym, solid guy, but I think the upside here is with the younger man in Kleydson Rodrigues. No bets for me on this fight as of now. And I think that from a prop perspective, probably the finishing looks on Kleydson would be how I'd look, and then Alatanghe Lee maybe by decision. Next up, my man, Piera Rodrigues taking on Adrian Carnelossi. This is a fight I was taping right before we got on the air. I'm not seeing what a lot of people are seeing with Piera Rodrigues. I do think Adrian Carnelossi is not very good, but I do think there's some potential upside with the fact that she's a young girl. She's had more experience, and she's fought, quality opposition outside the UFC. Ketlin Souza, now a UFC level fighter, she was able to beat her, finish her as well. So when I'm looking at this, I say, this is a spot where Adrian Carnelossi, physical girl, very strong. She has gone out there and TKO'd an opponent, submitted an opponent, not the highest level girls, but I think of Piera Rodrigues is right around that same level. Some people rate her on a bit of a higher scale. She was going out there having very competitive minutes with Kay Hansen. If Kay Hansen did not gas out in that fight, I think Kay Hansen wins it cleanly. Kay Hansen muffed a couple submission attempts in that fight as well. Kind of the story of her career, unfortunately, but like she had some good looks and some good opportunities there and didn't get where she was trying to go. And when I'm thinking about this fight, I say, both these women prone to making some mistakes, but Adrian Carnelossi coming back off a long layoff, looks like she's in tremendous physical shape, one of the longest layoffs on the card. So what is her potential upside here as the younger fighter who's coming back off a layoff? Maybe she's made some improvements. I know she had some injuries to deal with, but I just think that she's already the younger girl with more experience, and she's had some time to make improvements. I'm just not really sure why the line would blow out so much. I think that both these women have takedown upside. I think that in terms of the striking, neither one of them has good defense. Both of them have somewhat potent offense. I think Piera is a little bit more effective on the feet, but I don't think she's like a runaway favorite there because I think her cardio is suspect. And I also just think she's very easy to put on her back. Kay Hansen, the takedown she was getting, there was not great sophistication. Unless she gets you up in the air with those butterfly hook elevators, she's just flat backing it like it was kind of unbelievable. So shout out to Pepe, says the problem is Carnelossi coming off back surgery, ACL surgery. I do think very notable, right? Serious injuries there. But with the muscles that she has, she's clearly been back in the gym. That's all I'll say. How do you feel about this one, Rich? Curious fight.
Yeah, I imagine the line's the way it is because of recency bias, what both girls have done, or in Carnelossi's case hasn't done because she's been off for a while. But anything Rodrigues has done hasn't impressed me in her career. People cite the Sam Hughes fight. I imagine they give her a pass for the Gillian Robertson fight because it was a very binary, and she took advantage of that grappling. But I like the Arnie side, man. I think she's a good underdog on the card. I don't think there's many of them. So, yeah, she's one of the ones that I'm going to be taking. I don't really care about the injuries that she had. I don't think she'd be back here if she was still suffering from them or if there was a problem. She looks ready to me from what I've seen. And I just think Rodrigues is mid, like everywhere, man. That takedown defense isn't good. When she takes people down, she can't hold them there. And there are some concerning things from tape. Arnie, she got held down by Loopy, but Loopy's a good wrestler. So I don't mind that. And everyone she's fought have been kind of like anti-grapplers or good grapplers in themselves, like Angela Hill, Loopy, Ribas was the other one. Yeah, so I'm going to take Arnie, man. I'm surprised that the lines going the way it is. It is getting super disrespectful for women's MMA. I think they should be minus 110 apiece, and they're not. So my hand's kind of been forced.
Yeah, I would say, if you want to factor in the layoff and you want to factor in the activity, for Piera. Okay. Also shout out to Pepe. I do think this is an important note. 8% takedown defense for Carnelossi. It does come from 2 fights. She got taken down by Lupi Godinez, who I think is a better wrestler than both of these women by a pretty substantial margin, to be fair. And then the other fight where she got taken down, was that the Angela Hill fight or what fight was it? I'm trying to think. But she basically gave up, I think 8 takedowns in her career in 2 fights. And I do think the other fights it was Na Liang. That's who it was. Na Liang took her down like multiple times. But that's Na Liang's game plan, right? She just sells out all the way for takedowns. If she gets them, she's trying to win with, a quick finish. If she doesn't get it, that's the way it goes. So, she sold out for takedowns, didn't get where she needed to go, and ended up getting finished there. So, yeah, I just feel like in this spot, Carnelossi to me just seems like the more upside fighter. Just at the big plus money price with those big muscles, post USADA era. Come on, let's figure it out. But
yeah, and that's
please go ahead.
That's an excellent example of why I don't use stats, man. She might have 8% takedown defense, but it depends on who you've been facing, man. And Piera doesn't have the wrestling that Lupi Godinez does. So that just goes out the window for me. I don't really care about the 8%. Yeah, out of the women's fights, I think this is the one where the underdog could cash. The other ones, I think it's kind of a one-sided. Well, bar Angela Hill, but we'll get to that. But yeah.
The other thing I wanted to mention is I think the physicality and, like I said, the cardio collapse of Kay Hansen had a lot to do with that. And I do think that in this fight, the physicality from, Carnelossi is going to be superior. Coming off the injuries, that's the concern is maybe I'm wrong about that. But just like looking at them visually and trying to size them up, I think Carnelossi is going to be stronger. And I'm not confident either one of these women has a cardio advantage. So to me, it's almost like an open question, and I would probably speculate that it's Carnelossi. She's gone a little bit deeper in these fights. She got doctor stoppage by Angela Hill, but she's competing in that fight in terms of the strike count. She just was a little bit, out veteran by somebody who's been around the game a lot longer than her. So interesting fight though, in the women's division especially. But we can move along to the next fight, my man. Abus Magomedov, how the mighty have fallen, brother. He is all the way on the prelims on the fucking shittiest card of the year. But here he is. He's taking on Warlley Alves, coming off of 2 straight losses. And Warlley Alves, he's been on hard times in this middleweight division. Not really sure what he's doing here. Ikram Alaskarov, not a nice welcome to the division either. But Nicholas Dalby, a fight we could justify him losing. Dalby's been on a good run. Jeremiah Wells, pretty solid guy. Beating Munir Lazez doesn't tell me very much. Losing to Randy Brown via triangle choke. It's like, man, who's getting triangle choked in the UFC in the year of our Lord? What was that? 2019. I mean, not a great look. Doesn't happen at a very high clip. So I do question his cardio. I question his preparation. I question his willingness to be here, how much he wants it. But I question all those things on the other side for Abus as well. Not his willingness to be here or his want to compete, but his ability to take a shot, for example. I don't think he's very durable. He has lost to good quality competition. Sean Strickland obviously wore the belt since they fought. And then he lost to Caio Brajo, I think a guy who could fight for the belt. I think a guy who's very skilled. But you look at his win, Dustin Stoltzfus, that doesn't tell us very much either. He's beaten the guys he's supposed to beat, lost to the guys he was supposed to lose to, and now he's supposed to beat this guy, Warlley Alves. I think he's going to, but he just seems to me like a guy who's a little bit flaky. He's lost as a huge favorite before in previous organizations. We saw him got chinned by Lewis put the guns down Taylor, who just announced Bilal Muhammad is fighting for the title as well. That's the guy who put out that video. So in any case, I feel like this is a fight where Warlley is always live. He's got about 5 minutes in him. He can throw some hard body kicks. He can punch people in the head. But at middleweight, I don't really believe in his skills. You know, I think he's going to run into some people that could take him down pretty easily, like I think Abus Magomedov could do. And unless he gets guillotined, which is possible, I just think that Abus is way too big. I think he could kind of pass his guard and do what he wants. If you look, he rushed against Sean Strickland trying to take the back, but he was very close to taking his back. And Strickland is a guy that's been doing jiu-jitsu since he was like 14, you know? And when I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is a guy in Warlley who obviously has good jiu-jitsu, but he just doesn't seem to have the same willpower when he gets put on the ground. And I feel like Abus could maybe exploit that. How do you feel about this, Rich?
Yeah, I think Magomedov wins. I don't think Warlley Alves has any business being at 185. I think he's lazy, don't want to cut the weight. He's on his way out of the game, loses this one. He's probably going to get cut. Lost his last couple of bouts. The Nicholas Dalby one was concerning. I think he won round 1 and then kind of just like fell off a cliff. I don't think he's serious about this anymore, and he's just waiting for his contract to end. Yeah, don't mind either. I think he does get a finish. Based on the numbers, submission would be something to bet on because the KO's like plus 110. That's unplayable to me. It was weird that he got Strickland in his second fight in a main event. Super suspect that was. But then we know who his manager is. 6-inch reach advantage. Metrics are on his side. Yeah, say no more, man. He's probably on the juice also. I don't think Warlley Alves is. That's something else to factor into it. So, yeah, I think there's some underdogs on this card, man, but Warlley Alves isn't one of them.
Fair play, man. You know, if I was going to like try and cover my Warlley Alves exposure, you know, I'm giving away a little game. I haven't bet this, but I would probably look towards the fight ends by sub. It's, you know, it's a way of covering Abus, taking him down and dominating him on the ground because he's a bigger guy. And his last 2 wins before he came to the UFC were both via submission. You know, he obviously kicked Stoltzfus right in the face, but I don't think that's going to be every win he gets in the promotion. And especially after, you know, getting dropped in his last fight, he might go out there and try and grapple a little bit, exploit, you know, a weakness in Warlley Alves in terms of the physicality. And on the other side, Warlley Alves, like, you know, his best skill set is probably that guillotine choke. And that's the way I see him winning this fight. You know, catch Abus, you know, taking a bad shot, sloppy attempt, guillotine, thanks for playing, goodbye. That is his best move, and he will commit, right? He'll pull and go for it. That's how he's gotten his best wins on his ledger. So just a couple of things to keep in the back of our mind. But, yeah, I don't think things are going to go very well for Warlley, unfortunately. I think this might be his last fight in the UFC. Next up, we've got Tamires Vidal taking on Melissa Gatto. Why don't you start us off here, Rich?
Yeah, well, I've got nothing nice to say about Vidal, unfortunately. Sorry, not sorry. She's a fat mess. She probably shouldn't be in the UFC. She's probably one of the worst on the roster. Does nothing well. She's got some leg locks that she'll catch some bums in. I don't think she's going to catch Gatto. Gatto's a brown belt in BJJ. I'd be surprised if she does get her sub. She's got poor cardio, poor footwork, poor decision-making. So, yeah, Gatto's the side for me. Line's still off, though. I don't like to play women's MMA at minus 300 or whatever she is. I'd look for a finish on the Gatto side, but one of the horsemen have bet her ITD, so I'm off that. I'm not falling for that trap. Yeah, I like Gatto. Sometimes she's a bit suspect with the IQ, but all the women are. She's tough, durable, good cardio. So, yeah, Gatto's got all the upside to me. She'd have to pull a massive stunt to lose this fight, man. Yeah,
I tend to totally agree with you, right? The one thing is she's coming up in weight. So that's the only factor that's made me like, think about it more, because she's normally a huge physical hoss at 125 where she's just dominant over these women physically. And now she's at 135. I think Tamires Vidal is a complete phony. I think she's a fugazi. I thought that since I saw the Aylin Perez tape where she's clearly getting whooped like she was owed money. And then all of a sudden she gets kneed in the head and she's like, you know, off in the distance, you know, the Luana Pinheiro, if you will. But when you look, I think that this is a spot where, you know, I'm looking at Tamires Vidal as a fade piece in the UFC. I don't think she's very good. The Ramona Pascal fight, aside from a knee to the body, was fairly close. The Montserrat Rendon fight, I joked before that Montserrat Rendon, with all due respect, looks like she's throwing punches underwater. Like everything is moving so slow, and it's just like still connecting with Tamires Vidal because there's no defense, there's no reactions, I feel. And I think she's there to be hit. I think Gatto hits harder. Shout out to my guy Pepe in the chat, says Vidal shocks the world, wins by split. It's women's MMA, so that is within the bounds of possibilities, right? I'll never throw that out the window. But I'll just say the way I see this going down, I think that Gatto has powerful kicks. I think she could land big kicks in this fight, kind of at will, to the legs and to the body. And I also think that on the ground, there is a levels gap between these women. I think that Gatto should be able to dominate her on the mat. You know, Tracy Cortez, talented fighter. I thought that Gatto was going to win that fight. It was a close fight that she spent too much time on her back and gave it away a little bit, but she did some damage. She competed very hard there. I think Tamires Vidal would get absolutely exposed by Tracy Cortez and the hell beat out of her. So, yeah, it's just for me, like looking at that fight and then looking at this fight, I'm like, yeah, this should be a layup, I feel, for Melissa Gatto. So I think Melissa Gatto finishes this fight.
I do think if Gatto wins, it's going to be attritional. So instead of taking like ITD or whatever you want to pick, KO sub, hit the rounds, man. 2, round 3 especially, because it's going to come when Vidal, gasses in the fight.
Yeah, I feel it. And I did think of looking at the sub prop obviously opened like plus 220. Plus 225 or so. But I kind of think that we've seen, Gatto can KO people in the UFC. Like whether that's with the body kicks or whether that's just going out there and getting on top of somebody, what's to stop her from passing to the mount and just opening up with ground and pound and finishing this girl? I don't really see what would stop her from doing that. So that's the way I feel about this matchup. Gatto inside the distance is the way I'm leaning, but I'll do a little more research to make sure that I'm not getting out over my skis. Next up, Oumar Sy is debuting in the UFC against Tokkos. And I haven't done as much research on this fight as I would have liked. Kind of got put on the end of my priorities list because we didn't even have a line when I was looking at this on my show yesterday. But this is a fight where Oumar Sy, what I can tell you guys is I watched his tape, and watched some highlights and whatever. He looks like a guy who's strong, athletic, can get takedowns, can finish people on the ground, throw some ground and pound, can advance position, can get to rear naked chokes. It doesn't seem like it's some great sophistication. He seems like he's a talented enough guy. He seems like he's got athletic prowess. On the other side, Tokkos was a huge favorite on Road to UFC, which is kind of hysterical in hindsight. The guy has struggled in his steps up in competition. Biggest win in his career is maybe Myron Dennis. Not a great win, and it was kind of unfortunate circumstances there. So I'm not really sold on him as a prospect, but he is a guy that's been around for a long time. I found interviews of him from like Gracie Academy and shit online years back in the UFC Apex. He's been cornering guys in the UFC. He trains with a bunch of UFC level fighters. So if there was a guy that was going to come in and kind of be ready for a short notice opportunity, does seem like the guy, who's training with Brendan Allen. He's training with all these guys, getting a bunch of work in. So I don't know if it's a huge underdog price. I may be tempted. I don't think that, betting on, shout out to my guy Moyes. I don't know that betting on European grappling long-term is plus EV, but we'll have to figure it out on Saturday night. And this isn't the fight I have the strongest opinion on. Rich, why don't you take it away, brother?
Well, thank you for the conversation because I tried to mention it on Guru's show and he shut me down. So I haven't done that much work like yourself. It's a relatively new bout. But what I will say is when I watched the tape on Sy for the original fight he had, I was going to fade him and bet him to lose, probably get subbed. I don't like him, man. I don't think he's a fighter, quote unquote. I think he's a physical specimen like Petrino. But yeah, I don't think he's a fighter, man. It's just whether this Ducote guy has improved since his Dana White Contender Series day. Like you said, he's working, he's at Killcliff. It always makes me suspicious when people are an Ali Sleaze guy. So I'm going to look into it, man. Maybe Sy gasses. He's making his debut. It's a big occasion for him. Who knows? He might do a Kleydson Rodrigues, might go all out, try and get a finish and not get it. And then what in round 2 and 3? So I think it's definitely worth looking at. And I think it's naive to just say that, this big, black, scary guy is going to fuck everyone up. So yeah, I'm definitely going to look into it some more, man.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about the Ming Yang Zhang fight, if you go back and rewatch it, it is not like Tukos did not land big shots. That's the only fight of his that I can say definitively I like know like the back of my hand, because I watched Ming Yang Zhang and I picked him over Brenson Ribeiro because I was like, it does not matter if you have better skills than this guy. He will just tank damage and kill you. And like that is what Ming Yang Zhang does. He has gotten knocked out a handful of times on the regional scene in the past. But when you look, Rich, I think he got on a supplement routine that was a little different. That now this guy is just like ding, boom, boom, ding. Like he just gets popped back and just keeps throwing like nothing happened. And I'm like, that is going to win fights at light heavyweight, because these other guys, you know, they're just human beings, right? They're going to go down when they get hit on the chin. So you look at the Tokkos fight. Tokkos was out there landing, looking a little bit, you know, more fluid with the movement at for some points. But overall, you're just seeing a guy who's landing with bigger impact every time. And he did a lot of damage, brutal finish. So then you're like, okay, is Tokkos really terrible, or did he just run into a guy who's on cyborg roids and now has gotten a win under his belt in the UFC? I think that's certainly something to consider. And I'm looking at this like, all right, this is probably just like a contender series fight, you know, highly volatile. Obviously, the short notice nature of it would tilt it a little bit more towards the side of things. But if Tukos has some semblance of takedown defense, probably be looking towards that side. If he has any kind of grappling pedigree as well, just because I think a lot of what Sai does is physicality. He's strong as shit. So he reaches down, grabs a hold of two legs, turns somebody sideways and slams them to the ground. But I think that if somebody has like a real ground game and can put him in more, you know, competitive scrambles, he might gas out. So that's the way
and I think that's going to probably be the story of this fight, man. The little tape that I did watch when I was just flicking through YouTube, Tuco, he seems like a Khabib type guy now. I'd make a comparison to Malkoon. You know, he seems like one of those type fighters. He was just looking
to down, ground and pound, no submission attempts.
Yeah, blast double everybody.
I did see Sai go for rear naked chokes to answer Dixon's question. He like basically he'll get to a dominant position, throw a couple ground and pound strikes, guy gives their back, go for the rear naked choke from there. He doesn't seem like incompetent on the ground, but it's one thing to look good on top. It's a different thing to look good on bottom. So that's the only question I would want to see answered from him.
Yeah,
so I did not see him taken down. Go ahead.
Yeah, that doesn't mean shit to me, though. The fact that he's rear naked chokes and bums, like his record shit too, man. It's like you said, man, it categorizes it like perfectly. This is a Dana White contender series fight. There's a lot of unknowns on both sides. And that's why I said it'd be naive to just think that Sai is going to fuck him up. Because he's fought low-level competition. Yeah, he's got finishes, but they gave it up quick, man. He physicalities, whatever you want to call it, everybody, because he looks like a monster. You know, he's got the muscles, he's on the steroids. But if that doesn't work in round 1, 2, and 3, it could look like Rebecca. Remember Rebecca against Fior? You don't get your finish in round 1, so he just lays in guard. He could do that to Tuco. Tuco could fucking, you know, scramble. But like I say, man, I should do some more fucking tape before I talk too much.
Yeah, I think that this is one we got to just look deeper into. If I do any late week content, I'll dig a little bit deeper into that. But otherwise, you guys can check out my article for Roto Grinders. That's always where I have, you know, my sharpest reads of the week, I would say, where I've gotten down to business. And, you know, that's available on Patreon as well. So next up, Tom Nolan taking on Victor Martinez. I can't remember if I started us off on the last one, but I'll start us off here because I have some thoughts. Tom Nolan last time out, I think he got ego checked a little bit. You know what I'm saying, Rich? Like my man was out there talking a gang of shit. He's like, I'm going to kill this guy. I'm going to knock him out in the first round. It's going to be easy. And honestly, I think if you rerun that fight, he's a favorite again, just because I think he's got more skills. He's got more attributes that you want to see in a fighter. But Nicholas Moda has been embarrassed before. He's been humbled before. He's been knocked out in big opportunities. And that kind of builds a little bit more humility into your game, right? So he knows, hey, I can be knocked out. It's happened to me in the UFC. Got to have a little bit of defensive responsibility. Got to go out there and look to pick my shots, not throw everything, not, you know, come out there barreling forward, chin in the air, trying to kill somebody. And that's what we saw from Nolan. And he got humbled, right? He got checked. Nicholas Moda, what does he have? Like, what's the one thing he can really do well? He can knock people out. You know, he's got heavy hands, but outside of that, you know, he doesn't have a great ground game to speak of. He's never submitted anybody, I don't believe, as a professional. Like, there was a bunch of liabilities in his game that you could have potentially exploited. And my man was like, let's swing in the pocket until somebody dies. And he died like 40 seconds into it. So tough look there. He's been TKO'd twice now, once in the amateurs, once in the professional ranks. So it's something to keep an eye on, but he's 24. I think he's fine. I think, like, okay, we got that one out of our system, kid. Now let's go in there with a little bit of tact. Let's go in there with a little bit of poise, a game plan. Let's not rush it. I think he's got a very winnable fight. I think the UFC has kind of put him in a winnable position here, because I look at Victor Martinez as a guy, I think he's got some credentials on the mat, but he's 0-2 career to the submission, 8-2 career record to the knockout. Sounds great, except he's got no knockout wins since 2019. That was 5 years ago. So my man is like not had very many fights, right? He's not been very active. He's kind of been on the sidelines. Then he goes out there against Jordan Levitt, and I remember he was a popular pick. I remember people were getting behind this guy, and he got punted in the face. He was getting kneed in the face. He was getting brutalized by Jordan Levitt. Getting twerked on, unfortunately. It was a brutal result for the guy. So he had canceled bouts with Trevor Peek. What does that tell you? Does the UFC like Trevor Peek, or do they not like Trevor Peek? They want Trevor Peek to have fun fights. They want to put him in fights where he can go out there and have a fight of the night. And I think that they look at this guy, Victor Martinez, and they say, this guy can go out there, swing and bang on the feet, have a fun war, but I don't think they expect him to win fights. I don't think they expect him to have a future with this company. I think they're like, hey, thanks for sticking around. Good to have you on the roster. And I think they're just feeding him to guys that they want to see succeed. And I think that Tom Nolan is a guy that they would like to see succeed. And in this spot, Tom Nolan, last time out really fell short. So now they're trying to give him a winnable fight. This dude, like I said, 0-2 career to the submission. He's been knocked out twice as well. So it's not like he's you can only get me this way. It's like, no, wherever you want to take the fight, I can find a way to lose. And obviously he's had more fights, right? So he's had more opportunities to lose. Maybe Tom Nolan, if he has as many fights, he has the same record. But I just think Tom has more upside. I think he's a more dangerous guy. He's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's a guy that on the feet does a good job of sprawling, brawling, punishing guys from the front headlock, throwing strikes from there, looking for chokes. I just think that he's a guy that is going to have the right answers for Victor Martinez here. And as long as he doesn't go out there like, I'm going to revenge myself by throwing in the pocket for the next 45 seconds until somebody dies, then I feel like this is a spot where Tom Nolan is going to look way better than he did in his first fight. But I will also say, you guys know me. I'm not a parlay guy. I'm not a, hey, go lay, a bunch of units on this. So this is for me a spot where you pick your prop or, you move on. I don't believe in the Martinez side. I think he's going to get smoked here. So how do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I feel the same, man. There's a couple of chalky bouts on this card where, you can't take the money line because of that. And I'm talking about Nolan, Gatto, people like that. So, yeah, props are the way to go, man. Like you said, you've pretty much covered everything. Martinez, 5 losses, 4 via finish. Never subbed anyone, lost by sub twice. Metrics are on Nolan's side. Yeah, Nolan fucked up his debut, and Martinez did. I think Martinez's was worse, to get bullied, not only KO'd, but bullied by Jordan Levitt the way he did. He looked like he'd seen a ghost in there, man. He didn't show up. And when I look at the regional scene, this guy is very suspect, especially in the wrestling department. I've seen Nolan roll around with some bums as well. But, he eventually finishes the fights. He just seems secure on the ground. And I gave it out like fucking 2 days ago. So I don't care what people do now. I bet Nolan by submission. It's too wide. And that's the way to go, in my opinion.
Shout out to Moy, says Rosales knocked down Martinez but broke his hand at the same time. That's unfortunate luck. Listen, I think that, it's a fight, right? So we've seen Nolan is not invincible. He could definitely get cracked on the chin. It's a fight. They'll exchange a little bit. But I think that if Nolan's smart, he's going to say, hey, let's mitigate some risk. Let's get on top of this guy. Let's beat him up a little bit. Let's punish him, pass the guard, and finish. And I think that that's very possible. So that's the way I'm looking at this fight. I agree with your analysis. I wrote it last time, right? Against Nicholas Mota, I was on the same bets, and it didn't work out, right? What does that mean? I'm going to just say abandon the strategy. It was all for naught. No, it's a system, right? It's like, hey, let me see if this works out the second time. eventually you say, all right, maybe this guy doesn't have the skills I thought, but we've seen it in the past on the tape regionally. He attempts submissions. He's willing to attack that. Amateur record. He's got a rear naked choke win as well. And then this guy's 0-2 career to the sub. So it's a clear path to victory. Can I just remind people, Jordan Levitt was plus 200 to win by submission against this character. And now Tom Nolan is plus 1,000, right? So I'm not saying that they're on the same level of grappling, but it's like, does he not have long arms? Is he incapable of doing a submission? He can't lock two hands together like this. Just doesn't seem right to me. So good shit. But we can move to the next fight, my man. I'm glad we're seeing this one the same way. And Tom Nolan, if you let me down again, I will be fucking, calling you dead to me for life and then betting it again the next time you fight, you son of a bitch. So next up, we got Angela Hill at 115 pounds taking on Luana Pinheiro. And this is a fight where Luana Pinheiro, I thought looked very good in her last fight, but she did get dropped. She did get hurt in that fight. It was like 5.5 months ago. Pretty quick turnaround off a brutal fight. Rich, we'll let you start off on this one. How do you feel about this matchup? I think you have some concerns that Angela Hill may be getting mushed.
Yeah, well, Barboza is mush of the week this week, but people didn't like it because Barboza is an underdog. So I threw Angela Hill out there as a favorite, as the mini mush of the week. I do think she loses. I think Pinheiro wins round 1. Round 2, I think she bags that. And then Angela Hill, has her way in round 3 when Pinheiro slows down. There's nothing too profound there. We know Pinheiro gasses. Angela Hill's pretty durable. I don't really see Pinheiro finishing her outside of a fluke KO. I don't think she can sub Angela Hill. Better women haven't. I know she got subbed back in the day by the likes of Randa Marcos at like fucking 14-1. I was there for that. But these days, I think Hill's going to stay safe. She didn't get subbed by Dern. Pinheiro isn't going to do it. I do think Pinheiro is a flake. But there's something suspect about this fight. Not only the line. When you go and do the tape, man, go watch the Dern fight. It tells you everything you need to know. Dern was hitting judo trips at will against Angela Hill. And I believe if she can do that, Pinheiro, for all of her problems, she certainly can get Hill down, waste some time in guard, and the rest of it. But that is going to deplete her even more. So when they stand on the feet for round 3, I think at a very high clip, Angela Hill wins that. Maybe even a 10-8, man. We could see her putting it on her, almost getting the finish. So the draw could be live if that's your thing. You can get it at 80-1 and bet 365 if you've got fucking $5 to spare. But yeah, Hill's going to do what Hill does, man. She runs away with the fight if people give it up. Back in that Gomez fight, which I think was her last fight, if I'm not mistaken, it happened there, man. She's able to run away with it. But I don't know. Pinheiro's strong early. She's willing. She's athletic. She's physical. She's got them trips. And she could catch her with a punch, man. Dern did it a couple of times. Sometimes it's not the more technical person who wins and is fastest to the punch. If someone's doing unorthodox shit, man, they can definitely clip you. So yeah, that's how I see it going, man. 29-28 to Pinheiro. Hopefully, I don't, fuck this up and Angela Hill gets something like a submission in round 3 when Pinheiro's totally gassed. I'll be pissed off, but yeah, I'll take Pinheiro, man. That's my official pick.
Hell yeah, dude. I think this is a close fight. I think it's a difficult fight to call. I put a lot of different plus money in my idea board this week from this fight because I think the finishes are live on both sides. And let me just paint a picture of why. And this is kind of the way that I approach handicapping a fight like this. I always think to myself, I'm like, do I really want to play either woman, in this like 55 to 45% range? I mean, there's just a lot of variables you're dealing with, right? On the one side, Angela Hill could just get old overnight, right? She's looked great in her recent fights, but what was the other danger of that Mackenzie Dern fight? Mackenzie Dern's not, Muhammad Ali. She's not Mike Tyson, right? She just went out there and landed a huge punch with an overhand right and dropped her pretty easily in that fight. And honestly, guys, I thought that they robbed us as the TKO. Like plus 2,500, she beat the absolute shit out of Angela Hill for the whole fight. Angela Hill's a tough woman. Take nothing away from her. But just like for her own career, she just ended up taking more damage than she needed to in that fight, as far as I'm concerned. And I had concerns going into the Gomes fight that was going to rear its ugly head. Now, when you look at, the spot here where it's like, okay, Luana Pinheiro coming off of, a brutal fight. That's the concern for me. She's a young girl, but to your point, judo trips, takedowns. Angela Hill, I used to say she takes herself down. She's even as she's gotten better. The Ashley Yoder fight, she's out there landing knees in the clinch and just falls and just like gives up top position to Ashley Yoder, who couldn't get a takedown anytime when she tried. It was like, it's like she can defend a takedown, but she's off balance. So judo people are really good at off balancing you. And I do think she's tried to work with the right people. J-Flow Judo, she's tried to do a lot, but it's hard to teach an older dog new tricks. So she's very good with the stand-up. She's got excellent output. She can fight. She's tough. She's game. She's not easy to put away. But Amanda Lemos, what happened in that fight? She hurts her so bad in the first round. And then she's unable to finish because she does not have real submission offense to go to. The one submission she has is like grabbing a hold of somebody and just squeezing their head so hard. Like most of her submissions aren't real technical, right? They're just, I'm very strong. I have your head in a vice grip. Thanks for playing. And when I look at this fight, Luana Pinheiro, she hasn't showed off her submission prowess in the UFC, but she has good grappling chops. One thing I haven't heard mentioned by anybody, I don't think in the last fight, and I don't think this week talking about this fight, is the fact that Pinheiro had a really emotional fight last time out. Like Amanda Hebos and her trained growing up together, and they spent time living in the same room and whatever, going to the same training camps. Like that, it was like a weird thing, like two sisters growing up, going out there fighting. They fought like two dogs. Like they were like punching each other right in the face, like from bell one, right? That's not how you see normal women's fights play out. And Pinheiro was going out there for blood. She was out there to kill. And I think she spent herself looking for the finish. I think she thought she was going to knock out Hebos a few times. Hebos was wobbly. She had hematomas on her head. She got beat up. But she's tough, and I don't know what kind of supplement she's on, but her chin seems to have made a miraculous advancement from like getting knocked out every time to like getting rocked and like recovering now. So hats off to her. However she's managed to do that, God bless her. At post-USADA era, it's only going to be easier. But this is, for me, a spot where I think Luana Pinheiro is live for the finish early. How is Angela Hill live for a finish? What if this fight extends? We just saw last time out. Is Amanda Hebos like, again, some thudding kickboxer? No, but she just was able to keep pushing the gas pedal. Pinheiro was gassed and she was forced to fold, right? She just didn't have anything left to give. And Angela Hill, over 5 rounds, capitulates sometimes. She doesn't always have the greatest gas tank you've ever seen, but can she fight for 3 hard rounds? Yeah, typically she can. So I think that in this fight, if she doesn't get finished early, Angela Hill is live to finish this fight in round 2 or round 3. If Pinheiro goes out there, balls to the wall again, or if her chin is compromised based on the fact that she got beat up 5 months ago. But Angela Hill's chin could be compromised based on the fact that she got beat within an inch of her life by Mackenzie Dern. So for me, it's just like, I think violence is probably being underrated in this spot. That's where I'll leave it. But did you have anything else you wanted to add, Rich?
No, I'd just say if anyone was thinking of doing that, fuck the Luana shit off. Just take Hill ITD. I don't see Luana finishing Hill at all, man. But that's just my 2 cents.
I'm just saying, if Randa Marcos could do it in round 1, Luana Pinheiro could do it in round 1. I thought she was very close to finishing Hebos at points in round 1. So just something to consider. But I do agree with you. There might be some value on Hill ITD there. Like that, I literally went through and I was like, ends by sub, both women by sub, ends KO, both women by KO. Like any iteration of this fight, I was like, if it's violent, there's probably people underrating it. They think Angela Hill, decision machine. And for me, that's just not always going to be the case, especially in this kind of fight where I see pass for both women. So something to think about. But in any case, my man, we can move along to this next fight on the card where Adrian Yanez is taking on Vinicius Salvador. Why don't you start us off here, Rich?
Oh, this is the worst bout on the card, to be honest. When I was on Gurus last night, I said, let's just skip, man. This is unanimous. Obviously, we all like Yanez. We're all not going to play him because of the money line numbers being shit. The way I'm attacking it is I'm looking at Yanez round 2. I'm not going to take 2 and the KO because you can get 400 just for round 2. So, yeah, I'll let you deal with all the intangibles about Salvador being shit and a fugazi, man. But, yeah, this is a one-way traffic fight to me. Yanez finishes him. It's just what round? And I'm taking round 2.
Well, it's interesting because he actually trains with the He-Boss family. And I was higher on this guy coming into the UFC just because I was like, why is everybody in the world steaming Shannon Ross? If you remember, Shannon Ross was like minus 225 favorite against Vinicius Salvador on the Contender Series. And based on minute winning, like Shannon Ross isn't a horrible fighter, but he just has like this Achilles heel, which is if he gets touched on the chin, he starts to rock, wobble, gets in bad positions. He got club and sub by Urseg. He's been knocked out a number of times at the UFC level. But Vinicius Salvador, they're having a back and forth fight, and then he was able to finally connect on his chin and get him out of there. But you saw some of his vulnerabilities in that fight and why he was an underdog. He can give up positions. He can get taken down. He can get backed up. We've seen those things regionally as well, but he has knockout ability. I think that that's one thing to keep in mind. He's moving up to 135 pounds, though. And Adrian Yanez, we got to be serious about who he was fighting, right? Rob Font, tough guy in the division, guy who's been around for a long time. And if you're not able to put him away, you know, he wins the minutes of most of his fights, right? Like even against Jose Aldo and these people, if he didn't get knocked down, 4 or 5 times, like the guy's tough as an old leather boot. He'll get dropped, get back up, keep fighting you all night. And I think that Yanez, shout out to Adrian or Jason Waterfalls in the chat, says Adrian Yanez. We'll get the pronunciations going here, but I think that Yanez has been on a hard road. Jonathan Martinez is a guy that was ranked in the division. His recent losses, both top flight ranked guys. And then you're looking at this fight. Vinicius Salvador, on the other hand, he's struggling in the flyweight division. He can't make the weight class. He's looking like death on the scales as well. If you remember, Rich, like he looked terrible on the scales for almost every fight he had, even when he was missing weight. So I don't know. I think he's a guy that's kind of hard to trust. I think that in terms of the He-Boss family, how many high-level fighters have come out of the gym? Like Amanda, this guy, I just don't know that they're producing a ton of high-level talent. And on the Adrian Yanez side, the thing that concerns me, his coach passed away, Saul Solis, and it's kind of been corresponding with his losing streak a little bit, right? Like he hasn't had his coach, and I think he's become sort of the coaching figure at the gym and trying to run everything. And that just makes life harder. He's a young man. That's a lot of responsibility to take on. So those are the only things that concern me on the Adrian Yanez side, but I think he's a higher level prospect. I think he's being set up for success here. I think that Vinicius Salvador, if I was in his corner, I'd be like, hey man, try and mix in the grappling and the low kicks. If you look at his career, I think he's landed like 29 low kicks in 3 UFC fights. Vinicius Salvador. Obviously, we just saw Yanez had no answer for Martinez's low kicks, which are much more potent. But still, if you're game planning, what would you try and do to Martinez? I would either try and wrestle him, take him to the ground. He hasn't been submitted in, I don't know that he's been submitted ever, but he got taken down by Miles Johns all over the place. Not even to like a grounded position, but just giving up that rear standing, hands on the ground, those type of bad looks. Optically, I think that if I'm Vinicius Salvador, I'm either low kicking him or trying to grapple because I don't believe that he can compete with him shot for shot in the boxing. A lot of what Salvador does is wide looping, crazy shots. And I just think Yanez is a lot tighter with his boxing. I think he'll get to the shot quicker. I think he'll be a little bit faster. And I think he's just more mechanically sound. I think he can counter pretty effectively when he gets his confidence, when his hands get going. To your point, Rich, he's not always a guy that starts hot. He tends to start a little bit slow in his fights. He comes out, he's looking to make some reads. He's looking to get the distance in the boxing. But once he has it established, once he understands what your patterns are, he starts to pick you apart with the right counter at the right time. And I do think that's probably going to materialize in round 2 or round 3. I also think Salvador is a guy that probably cut a lot of weight. So at 135, maybe he's not going to gas out as quick, but his fighting style also not conducive to fighting hard for, full 15 minutes. He's normally throwing huge shots, missing like crazy when he's overthrowing. So I think he could gas himself out and then get finished late as well. But anything to add?
One of them have been subbed before, and it isn't Yanez. And the problem with trusting Salvador to do low kicks or, put a complete game plan together is he's a fucking idiot and he's shit. Look at the fight with Victor Otomarino. Didn't once change up his game plan, whiffing at thin air. Victor Otomarino was able to level change on him. And it makes sense to me now that he comes from the Ribas camp, because I was like, this guy's a black belt and, he's got the fancy little fucking stripes on it as well. Like his second degree or whatever the fuck it is. But he doesn't show it in his fights, and he looks very susceptible to getting subbed himself. So I think he's just one of those people who've been fast-tracked to getting a black belt. He is only 27, so I'm a bit suspicious of if he's a black belt. But yeah, and your point to Yanez and his coach dying, and that coinciding with his performances. I think it was more about the performances, man. Like Font and Martinez, despite him losing to Aldo, are fuckers, man, and they'd fucking handle Salvador as well. So I
totally agree with that. I just mean, like, in terms of, are we seeing the best Yanez? Because honestly, I think at his best, he beats Rob Font. Like, I thought he was going to win that fight, and I think he was winning that fight until he got knocked out. But also, he's putting himself in range with a guy who hits very hard, and he got flatlined. Boxing's supposed to be his thing. He got flatlined in the boxing, so nothing you could take away from Rob Font there either. But yeah, I totally agree. Pepe says Alta has the worst takedown defense in the division. This is a crazy step down for Yanez. Yanez easy. Tend to agree. Also, I always wonder if Yanez is ever going to pull a submission out of his back pocket. He's obviously a proficient boxer, but to your point, Salvador's been submitted before. I would take the ITD instead of the KO. If I was going to lay chalk on a prop, I'd rather lay the 20 extra cents to just make sure that I don't look like a fool. So just something to think about. But because everybody's expecting the KO here on both sides, nobody's expecting the submission. I agree with that in terms of, like, you just said, hey, Liam, what's your prediction? But I always say it's MMA. Fucking shit happens, right? He just hits him. He goes to the ground, follows him to the ground, puts hooks in, and then, you're crying in your coffee because you laid minus 110 on a KO prop, and then, you feel stupid.
That's what I'm saying, man. If you like him like round 2, you can get 400 for that. So don't be a greedy bastard, man. Just take it.
Fair play. And if anything else, I'd look towards the unders here. I don't know what that's priced at. But is it 1.5? Yeah, I'd look towards the under 2.5 here. I think that's probably pretty solid. Under 2.5 minus 175, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little chalky, but if I was going to lay chalk, I'd prefer that to Yanez as well, just because we've seen him get sparked in the first round. We've seen him get blown out with calf kicks. So a couple different ways we've seen to beat him. But next up, my man, we got Themba Gorimbo, the answer, taking on Ramiz Brahimaj. And speaking of long layoffs, I tweeted this out earlier, right? And, we had a long layoff for Ariane Carnelossi, longest layoff on the women's side. She was dealing with some injuries. Ramiz Brahimaj, same thing is true, right? The difference is I think she had some corrective surgeries on the Ariane Carnelossi side. And, she looks to be in great physical condition. Then you're looking on the other side here, and you've got, Ramiz, he's a guy that had really serious injuries, it sounded like, right? Where he couldn't train for multiple months. He was dealing with pain in his arms, numbness in his hands and fingers, a bunch of pretty serious symptoms, problems with his back and his spine and stuff. And he's been out of work, right? Because this is his job, right? And so he's been kind of sidelined from working. And I think that he signed a new contract to take this fight. So I think he's going to get paid a little bit more money. I think he's going to have, that job security. Hey, you're still with the promotion. You've had some time off. Here's a new contract. But I think that he's getting back in there and needs to make some money. I'm not sure that we're going to get an optimal performance from Ramiz. Obviously, he's gotten back on the grappling mats, but he's been out of the cage for well over 2 years, right? 800 plus days outside the octagon. The entire career of Themba Gorimbo inside the UFC has taken place while this guy has been sidelined from the UFC, right? It's just been a while for this guy since we've seen him. And I do think he's got real talent on the ground. I think he's a dangerous guy, but also we've kind of not seen it against high quality opposition, right? We've seen it on the grappling mats. I'm talking about in the UFC's octagon. He went out there against Max Payne Griffin, talented fighter, and he got beaten up. People were telling me, he just got his ear knocked off. Did you guys not see all the damage all around his face? Like, the ear getting knocked off was merely a formality in the sense that he had been beaten up about the head, neck, and chest everywhere, right? He was getting beaten up in the boxing pretty soundly in that fight. Then you go back and you look at the Court McGee fight. I think people forget that Court McGee drops him in the first round. The end of the first round, Court McGee drops him and then the horn sound. So it's like, unfortunately, Court McGee unable to follow up. He might have been able to get one of his only UFC finishes, right? Court's a guy that's known for going out there, pushing decisions, not being very heavy-handed, needing to wrestle, needing to pace guys. And not only did he out wrestle, outpace, and out grapple the guy who's supposed to be doing the out grappling of somebody, right? He out grappled him from round 1 till the end. He out grappled him in every single round. So Court McGee was able to shut down his grappling game that's supposed to be very good. And then on top of that, and I'm not saying Court's not good, I am saying, but I'm saying Court not only stopped his game, he got his own game off with his wrestling easily and his grappling easily. He was taking him down, having success. And then on the feet, he drops him with punches. Like, I just saw that and I was like, whoa, that is a real concern for me. So beating Michael Gilmore doesn't tell me anything. That's the God's honest truth. Michael Gilmore was not a guy who was UFC level. He's from Murcielago MMA. There's guys like Chaos Williams. There's some solid guys that have come out of that gym. There's also Daquan Townsend, who went 0-4 in the UFC, right? Michael Gilmore, if they had given him more fights, would have went 0-4 in the UFC, in my humble opinion. I think that this is a competitive fight, right? I think in the early going, Brahimaj is dangerous. He can get takedowns. He could be a submission threat. But I think on the other side here, we've got Themba Gorimbo, who's had, like I said, his entire UFC career in this guy's absence. And the reason that that's so important is Themba's staying active. He's getting better every day. He's working at MMA Masters. And we saw what he could do with no real training partners, with no, serious ability to get resources, to get the right, training under his belt. And then he came to the United States. He's working with the right people. He's still a young enough athlete that he's improving fight over fight. Everybody told me, if he doesn't take it to the ground, he's screwed against Pete Rodrigues. Pete Rodrigues hits hard, man. Pete Rodrigues, he's got that sharp boxing. Themba Gorimbo hit him with a right hand that sounded like he hit him with a mallet. Sounded like he hit him with a freaking frying pan to the side of the head. Ding! And then I was like, oh my God, because Themba had told me he was going to knock out Takashi Sato in the DM. Shout out to my boy Themba. Told me he was going to knock out Takashi Sato. If y'all remember that fight, 2 seconds into it, he almost knocked out Takashi Sato. He had the flu. He ended up holding on to the guy, trying to go for chokes. Couldn't get the finish. But we saw he dominated that fight after getting into crazy grappling exchanges the fight before. He had gotten so much better from one fight to the next. Then the fight after, he was like, let's stop playing around with the grappling shit. I'm going to knock this guy the hell out. Bing, knocked him the hell out. I think that Themba Gorimbo, until proven otherwise, is that guy right now. I would not want to step in there with him. Is he the best UFC fighter I've ever seen? Maybe he's not. But does he have a strong will to win? Yes. Does he have a really dangerous, right hand? Yes, he does. Can he get his own opportunistic submissions because he's so lanky and lengthy? Yes. And does Ramiz Brahimaj gas out? Yes, he does. Over time in his fights, guys, I've seen it a number of times. When he goes deep in these fights, I do not like the cardio response that I'm seeing from Ramiz. On top of that, he's never won a fight that went outside the second round. Themba Gorimbo has won many decisions. He's proven he can go deeper into these fights. So for me, it just seems like Themba Gorimbo has a little bit more upside here. I understand people taking big plus money numbers on upside, on grappling upside. No problem there. But as this line came in, I just disagree with how aggressive it's moved. I think that AJ Fletcher and Ramiz would have a very honest fight, if you want to know the truth. And I also believe that AJ Fletcher, he had an unfortunate run. He's an in-betweener in terms of his size. Themba takes that fight, I believe, on short notice, comes in as a plus 270 underdog and overperformed expectations. So I think that people are holding Themba to a different standard. Whereas Ramiz has come in favored to beat some of these guys. Hey, lay up against Court McGee, lay up against these guys. He's so young, he's got all this upside. And where was it? He's getting beat up. So let's see how it turns out. But I like Themba Gorimbo. I think he's got the answer once again. How about you, Rich?
I like Gorimbo to win this fight. To answer somebody in the chat, the answer is 3 of the horsemen are on Ramiz. That might have had something to do with my decision to bet Gorimbo. We kind of agree and disagree. I don't think that Gorimbo is that guy. I think he's fortunate of some matchmaking. Somebody who gets finished by AJ Fletcher is never the guy, in my opinion. But he has done well with the other fights that he's had. He has overperformed. It's kind of weird to me that, this is the guy that the UFC have decided to get behind. I don't know. It's just weird to me, the whole Rock thing. I thought that was a bit weird as well. But yeah, in terms of this fight, everything you said, man, I don't get the love for Ramiz. I don't like to see a guy who's finishing all his fights in round 1 primarily. I think he had one that went into round 2. When it gets out of round 1 and he doesn't get his finish, we've seen what happens in his fights. I think that's what's going to happen here. I think they're going to fuck about in round 1. roll around on the floor. And then round 2, 3, Gorimbo is going to get a submission. Maybe club and sub, maybe just a pure submission. I agree as well. Ramirez, he gasses in fights, the time off. And just purely that this is clearly a setup from the UFC. Everything just leads to a Gorimbo win, man. I'll fade him in the future, but, these fights he's been having against a guy whose best win is Michael fucking Gilmore. I'm not fading him against that. He's got the metric advantage. He's more athletic than Ramirez. He's on the up, full of confidence. Like you said, working at MMA Masters, improving his game, while Ramirez has been in a fucking hospital bed. So to me, although I took Tisha Torres last week, which, I don't know whether that in hindsight, that was a good move or a bad move. I'd lean to bad because she lost the fight, whether you think she was deserving of that or not. But Ramirez, this is kind of the same situation to me. He didn't have a baby, but the fuck has been ill. He's been, in a bed for the last 2 years. So, everything leads to Gorimbo being the side for me. And for that reason, I'm taking him.
Fair play, my man. And I think that, like I said, it can be an honest competitive fight. But for me, I just like the momentum of Gorimbo. I like the confidence. I like the aggression. I like the power. I think that, we've only seen improvement from him over time. And with Ramirez, I just don't know what to expect. To your point, Michael Gilmore is not a credible UFC level win, right? What's his other UFC level win? Because we bet on both those fights, huge. By the way, like, we were on Ramirez inside the distance there. We had no compunction about that, right? But now it's just a different story where I feel we have somebody with athletic upside, finishing upside, marketing potential. I like Themba here. And shout out to my guy, Mason, with the dono here. $25 dono, says, shout out to my boy Liam, one of the honest and hardest workers in the game. I really appreciate that, brother. We're trying our best each and every week. We won't win them all. We won't be right every time, but we'll always try and come with receipts for what we got, whether we win or we lose, right, wrong, or indifferent. We're here to try our best. And also, Narrative Nation, Themba Gorimbo got approval to represent the flag of Zimbabwe. He went out there and basically he's been spending all his time and money on, charitable drives and shit. Shout out Sasha Palatnikov. I bet on Sasha against Ramirez. I've literally been trying to fade Ramirez because I do think that he is suspect, even since back then, Pepe. So I think that fight, again, if you run those fights right now with Themba Gorimbo, the guys that he's beaten, Sasha Palatnikov and Michael Gilmore, I think he smokes them both on the same night, honestly. So, give me Themba Gorimbo to go out there and avenge his coach who just lost a loved one and find a win, because he says he's extra motivated this week. He's crying at the press conference. Let's go, Themba. He's got the answer again, baby.
Where the fuck's my $25, man? I want to buy some weed too. Am I not sharp? You know what I mean?
Of course you are. Of course you are, brother.
I'm playing.
Shout out to our guy Themba for the answers in the DMs before. I did not even try and inquire this week. I know he's going to get too many people blowing up his DMs. What are we expecting this week? So I'll just have to read the market and see how it goes. But it's good shit. It's good shit. Let's figure out how it goes. But yeah, I'm not sold on Ramirez. I don't like his game, and I will look to fade him again in the future. Next up, Chaos Williams taking on Carlston Harris. And I think you've got stronger thoughts on this one than I do, Rich. So why don't you start us off here, brother?
The short of it is I like Chaos to win. Just getting my notes. Never been finished. Fast hands with power, decent cardio, good takedown defense. Been on 3 pay-per-views. Whereas Harris, they seem to keep sticking him at the Apex because he's a nobody. I think that he's overrated in his jiu-jitsu, Harris. I don't think he's a decent black belt. I think he's a specialist. Obviously, with the guillotine chokes and the darters, that seems to be his go-to move. So I think he needs top time, man, to get that going. I don't think he's going to get that with Chaos. It would surprise me if he even gets a takedown against Chaos. I can even see a world where Chaos takes him down and burns the clock in guard. The Wells fight, super concerning. I think he's lucky that Wells pulled a stunt. I don't know what the fuck that was. I literally watched it the other day. He was controlling the fight, Wells, man. And that's probably one of the biggest stunts of all time, getting himself subbed in round 3. What else have I got? Poor stand-up for Harris. I don't think he's good. I think he's striking slow and labored. Yeah, he had the KO against Impa. I think he just caught him, to be honest. That's the way I see it. I'd lean Chaos by decision purely on a numbers game. It's 5-25. The last time I looked, I think that's pretty generous. 5-1 for the decision. If you want the KO for Chaos, what is it, like plus 150 if you're lucky? So yeah, Chaos all day for me. He ticks all the boxes. Well, more boxes than Harris does. The only advantage I'd give to Harris is if he can get on top, he might be able to get some chokes going. But outside of that, he loses his fight, man. So Chaos all day for me, man. Age as well. Harris 35, Chaos like 32. Chaos Williams season, man.
I got to be honest with you, Rich. I don't know what to make of this fight. I like both these guys.
Convincing argument.
I bet Carlson against Shavkat at plus 205. You know what I'm saying? Like I thought that he was going to be dangerous in that fight because he kind of represented something similar to Shavkat, an extremely dangerous finisher, a guy who's a little bit upright in his stance, throws shots. But the difference is he's a little bit more wild and looping with his strikes, whereas Shavkat is a lot more precise. And so Shavkat was able to pick him apart on the feet. But I thought that if they had grappled, Shavkat likes to do his wrestling upper body, as you're well aware, Rich, right? Like he goes to the underhook, he'll move guys around on the clinch, double overhooks. Like he's just a tricky guy, likes to wrestle upright from the upper body. And I think about this and I'm like, man, Carlson Harris likes to wrestle upright from the upper body, and Chaos Williams probably hasn't had to deal with that much. Like it's just a weird style. So that's how I don't know how they're going to interact. Like if Chaos gets caught clinching with him, he does like weird foot trips and like, these like elevator knock off balances and stuff. Like he just has a very strange style of grappling. And especially from the feet, like a lot of what he does is like pull somebody's head in and just hit a crazy throw and stuff. So that's the one thing that makes me think he's probably going to be losing this fight. But could he win it at any point? Yes. Like I do think he's a guy where he can go out there and snatch that front headlock. And once he does, it's kind of wrapped for you. He's very, very dangerous with that one position. And he's a specialist, to your point. I don't expect him to go out there and hit a back take like some people are asking for this week, or like go out there and go and hit a triangle choke from the full guard or something. But do I think that he can go out there and basically submit anybody in the division with that front headlock series? Yeah, I really think it's that good because Jeremiah Wells, it's kind of laughable, right? On the commentary, they're like, no, he's finer. He's got the elbow out, so he's going to be fine. And then he's like asleep. And they're like, oh, no, never mind. Like they're like realizing in real time they don't understand what's happening. But in any case, like Jeremiah was trying to do the right thing. What I would have said is you want to create more space, push the hands together, try and create some space. Like you just need to do anything to alleviate that pressure right now and get some blood to your brain. And Jeremiah was like trying to do the right thing where he's like answering the phone a little bit and whatever. And that's why they're like, I don't know, the elbow's on the outside. He looks okay, but he just really never created enough space. And this guy just has no compunction about wasting his arms going for it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like he doesn't go half-assed. He is always like, I'm selling out as soon as I get it, as hard as I can until the fight's over or I have nothing left. Like he will just give himself up to the choke. And that's a hard guy to deal with. A guy like Chaos, I just don't know that he's ever grappled with anybody like this. Obviously he comes from a good gym, Murcielago MMA. I talked about, their ranking system, right? You got the Jamal Hills, the Charles Johnsons, the guy that are like, winning competitive high-level UFC fights, and then guys that have a lot more to prove. And Chaos has definitely been more on that upper echelon from guys out of the gym, right? He's won a lot of fights in the UFC, but the Rolando Bedoya fight played very close. The fight with, Randy Brown played very close. He's had a lot of very close fights where he's kind of left it, in between. The fights that he had that were great knockouts, they happened early on in his career. He put down Morono. Morono's not the guy with the greatest chin. Anthony Pettis spinning head kicked him in the third round. You know what I'm saying? Like he's just been a guy that you can kind of crack on the chin. He's a little bit there to be hit, has an awkward style in his own right. And then he was able to put down Abdul Razak Al-Hassan during a pretty down point in his career. And that was with, just catching him on one foot. Like Abdul Razak Al-Hassan goes for a naked low kick, just gets caught on one foot and put in the box. It was a nice knockout. But we've been expecting more of those knockouts from Chaos, and it kind of just hasn't materialized recently, So for me, I think that this fight probably ends violently one way or the other. I think Chaos is probably very live to win this fight by knockout. But if it does get to the grappling portion, I just think that Carlston Harris is going to find one opportunity to sell out on. So that's where I think Chaos needs to just keep this fight upright, stay away from him, land your big shots, and you should win the fight. I think he's a little faster and more athletic. I think he's a little bit more traditional with his shots. Like he throws normal low kicks and 1-2s down the middle. That's kind of how you get to a Carlston Harris in terms of the striking. But I don't know that I'm as convinced about his grappling game as I would want to be to lay chalk here. So if it gets to pick 'em price, if it gets to plus money on Chaos, nothing wrong with that. I think Pepe said he hit plus 105 on Chaos as well. I just feel like plus money is probably correct in this fight. I feel like it's a pretty volatile matchup. And Carlston Harris, the other thing is he's not like a 0% to win this fight by knockout. I do think Chaos has a great chin. I've never seen him rock before, but Carlston Harris just swings absolute bombs from his hip, and it's a division where one errant shot and you could go down. So I don't think it's like, a lock or something. I don't think it's the most likely outcome. I think Chaos KO, Carlston Harris by sub, but I don't think Carlston by KO is like unreasonable. So please go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to add, if we're going to oversimplify Chaos Williams' wins, I think we should do the same with Carlston Harris. Christian Aguilera, big whoop. Jared Gooden, come in short notice, wasn't able to get his submission. And I feel the same thing's going to happen with Chaos. If he gets him down, Chaos will mind his P's and Q's, stay safe. He knows the danger. And like we're saying, man, I don't think that Harris is pulling off triangles or arm bars or any shit like that. He's purely looking for those chokes as a choke specialist. And I think if he does do that and overexpose himself, it's going to give Chaos all the opportunity to get back to his feet. And yeah, I'd close with, if you're going to waste money on Harris sub, save it and put it on Gorimbo by sub, because I think he's got more chance of getting a submission than Carlston Harris has. Yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Damn, son. The Chaos Williams submission, that's probably 20-1 or higher. So if you want to go sprink that, go for it. But hell yeah, I think it's fine to have a bold take here. It's a close pick 'em fight. Good fight to make a pick on. So I don't feel as boldly as you. I have had, my love for Carlston Harris in the past, and I bet Chaos Williams against Michel Pereira the only time that he went out there and fumbled in that pick'em range. So that's the one thing that makes me a little bit nervous as well. Probably just like a baked-in bias. So don't let me cloud your judgment. I'm glad that you've got more conviction than me to share with the people. But with that being said, guys, we've got the main event of the evening to move along to here. So I just want to get a couple quick asides out of the way. If you're looking to invest in your information, if you're looking for sharp picks as well as great odds screens information, find all the props that you need, everything that you're looking for in terms of investing in your MMA information, fight numbers, 30% off down in the description box below. Use the promo code Liam. They will hook you up. And then this is not an advertisement. This is me sharing my buddies' great shit. Roll Life Jiu-Jitsu. I wear these to practice. If you ever see me doing videos, I'm wearing these because it's my buddy's company. I'm not getting paid for this, but the shit is quality. I enjoy wearing it. It's the only thing I wear to class these days. So shout out to my buddy Raph, doing a great thing, making a great product. Roll Life Jiu-Jitsu, here to stay. So with that being said, we're on to the main event. Fuck yeah.
Liam.
Edson Barboza. Oh, please go ahead.
Fight numbers. Do they do the the thing they do like best fight odds where they give you the odds for all the books? Is that available to everyone, or is that like part of the membership?
I believe that's part of the membership, but I have showed before what the screen looks like. Very, very helpful tool. And even during live betting, they have the best available books for whatever's going on in the fight. And it's for a bunch of the major books. So Caesars, Pinnacle, Circa, a lot of different books get accounted for there. Bet Online as well. So a lot of the important market makers, very powerful tool.
Yeah.
But with that being said, my man, the main event of the evening, we've got Edson Jr. Barboza, a familiar main event attraction, taking on Lerone Murphy, a guy who has been in the UFC for some time, but he struggled to get to the octagon at times. COVID, visa issues. Like he's just kind of had a difficult time getting right with the management. Now all these right portions, but in terms of the skill, in terms of the winning, producing inside the octagon, he's done everything right so far. I did think he lost his fight to Gabriel Santos. Who was that? I think it was Gabriel Santos.
Yeah, yeah. I think
Yeah, it was Gabriel Santos split decision. I thought he lost that fight. However, other than that, and I don't think Gabriel Santos is a bad fighter, by the way. I thought he was winning the minutes against Onama until he got detonated on the chin, and that can happen against a guy like Onama who's got big power. But looking at Lerone Murphy's professional record, draw with Zubaira Tuhugov, another talented fighter, a guy I don't really hold that against you. Short notice UFC debut, you go out there, you have a draw with a talented guy. Hey, hats off to you. In a tough part of the world as well. I believe he went to Fight Island, that was. So he goes to Fight Island, gets the win, gets the draw there, gets the win over Ricardo Ramos. I don't really count that for much, but he did what he's supposed to do, right? He delivered accordingly, got the finish, got the big win. Douglas Silva de Andrade, tough guy, a guy who's probably juiced to the gills. He said, F you, son. I don't give a shit who's here to test me. I'm still taking it. He would take it every time. And he showed up looking like a beast, of course, and he was still able to get the win there. Makwan Amirkhani wins round 1 against him, and then he detonates a knee on his shin and absolutely sent him to the stratosphere. I had Makwan round 1 sub bets there. I was looking to fade him that night. But that's the way I think you get to Lerone Murphy. I think you can get to him with a grappling pace. I think you can get to him with superior wrestling. I think guys, at the top of this division, like an Evloev, like an Ilya Topuria, can exploit his grappling. But I think short of that, not a lot of these guys have the grappling sufficient to go out there and expose him. I think he's only like a blue belt or a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's not the most seasoned guy on the mat, but he is a guy that's been putting in work. I did look at his Instagram. He's been advancing his rank. He's been spending extra time on the mat, saying it's a point of improvement for him. And then you go see his last performance. He goes out there against Josh Kulabau and sets the blueprint for how to beat Josh Kulabau without looking like an asshole, right? He goes out there, gets takedowns, dominates in the wrestling, and also got the knockdown with that body kick. So we saw a diversity of offense. We saw an ability to land effective shots on the feet, good ground and pound, an ability to put hooks in, take the back. He just kind of showed off a diverse arsenal of skills throughout his career. And I think that he's the younger guy with more upside right now. On the other side, Edson Barboza, talented striker, a guy I've underrated a little bit in the past. I thought Billy Quarantilla was at least going to give him a run. I thought they were going to have a war, and he was able to shut his lights off with that knee. We know that he has explosive power. He can shut anybody's lights off, but he goes 5 rounds with Sadiq Youssef, a guy who's a little bit chinny in my opinion. So maybe he can't shut off everybody's lights. Maybe he's managing his pace and his energy a little bit more now at 145 pounds, at an elder age, right? At a little bit of an advanced age for this division. So he trains with the right guys. He's a tough guy. He's on a 2-fight win streak. There's not a lot you could take away from him there. But let's just talk about the chin of Edson Barboza. Dropped by Giga Chikadze, dropped by Bryce Mitchell, dropped by Sadiq Youssef. If not dropped, he was hurt and rocked very badly. Shane Burgos and him just had a competitive back and forth scrap, and then he pulled away, beat Shane Burgos, knocked him out. The Makwan Amirkhani fight. Who doesn't finish Makwan Amirkhani? I mean, a little bit suspect there. Makwan Amirkhani has only gone to decision in a loss 3 times in the UFC. He was finished 4 times. Edson dragged him to a decision, couldn't put him away, which is a little bit concerning, right? Especially when you're talking about that power, that knockout, that upside. Is it really there? Are we seeing it translate? Especially in the 145-pound division. Dan Ige got hurt with a body shot, and he was still able to recover, pull himself to the ground, get this guy on top of him, get back up, and then win the fight. So I'm looking at this guy and saying, man, Edson's a tough guy, but he basically is losing all of his fights till he wins them. The Beneil Dariush fight, same way. He's getting dominated in that fight. The Dan Hooker fight, he looked great. But Dan Hooker was basically just a stationary punching bag that wanted to exchange strikes with him. I think if you find a way to mix it up with him, like Kevin Lee did, like Khabib Nurmagomedov did, like Paul Felder did, with the wrestling, with the takedowns, Dan Ige, if you try and mix in different phases to the fight, I think that can gas out Edson. I think it can make him overwhelmed and panicky. And I think that he's a tough guy, but his chin is not what it once was, and it was never the best. He got dropped by a jab from Donald Cerrone and then clubbed and subbed in the first round. So I think Edson's a very talented fighter, but he has a negative striking differential over the course of his UFC career. For as talented as he is and as potent as he is on the feet, he gets hit all the time. He gets hurt all the time, and he's fighting a young kid who should recover better if he gets hit and hurt in this fight, I would imagine, and who should be able to push deep into this fight. So both of them look like they're juiced to the gills to me. Obviously, Edson looks like he's on super drugs. So I don't feel like I need to go lay minus 165 on Lerone Murphy, but if the line continues to come in, I might get to the younger man here But it's an interesting fight because obviously Edson's got a bounty of experience. He's a great fighter, but I think he's a little bit old to be a prospect, and I think he's more of a gatekeeper. I think Lerone Murphy, in terms of UK prospects, he might be the one who's ready to burst through the gate. How do you feel about this one, Rich?
Yeah, I'm just looking at the price for Lerone Murphy now. Minus 160, you're saying?
I had seen anything from minus 140 to minus 160 earlier today. Let me see what it's at now.
Yeah, it's sitting at 145 now. I see. Yeah, I was just curious, man, because you said that. Yeah, no surprise, man. Mush of the week, innit? Barboza is mush of the week. Don't tell me I had to play my own game. An underdog can be mush of the week. It's a fade on the public, like we just said. The lines come in on Murphy. Barboza's getting some action. The public like him. So do the horsemen, and that's what the mush is all about. Everything Liam said, basically, I won't rehash everything, but it's the chin of Edson that concerns me most. Like Liam alluded to, the jab from Cerrone, Bryce Mitchell dropping him, Sadiq having him on skates. Not a good look. I don't think this weight class is good for him. He's just got fortunate in some of the matchups. I don't think he's got great hands. Usually when he KOs someone, it's meme type shit, like a knee down the middle or some spinning back kick. Shout out Terry Edim, been on all the fucking edits for like the last fucking 5 years. We'll probably see it again come Saturday.
100 times minimum.
100 times, man. Yeah, it's at the apex, that calls for action. I like Murphy, man. I'm not going to mention like the previous bouts, I'm going to pick on John Stargarian because I commented on his post he made. He likes Barboza. He said that Barboza hits harder. It would serve Lerone Murphy well to implement takedowns. That's not verbatim before I get picked up on that. But I don't agree, man. I don't think Edson hits harder. If we measured these two guys on the punching machine like Tom Aspinall, no. And I don't think he needs takedowns, man. I think he can more than compete on the feet with Edson Barboza. And I think he's going to knock him out in 2 rounds, man. We have Manchester on July 27th. Murphy is from Manchester. And just a side note, man, I've learned the fucking hard way. Manx are tough bastards, man. I used to live there back in the day. It's a fucking rough area, and the guys from there are rough as fuck, and they're hard as nails. So I like Murphy. He's undefeated. I agree he can be something for the UFC, someone they can, put on the cards with Meatball Marley and Paddy Pimlet. He's a tough guy, man, and I think he can take whatever Barboza's going to give him, and he's going to shut out his lights, and I like him to do it within 2 rounds, man. So I'm going to bet that. I've already made a big bet on the money line. Yeah, what more can I say, man? Murphy for the win.
All right, now I got to address the chat. Simulation says Dariush was not dominating Barboza until he got KO'd. He was backing him up. He was pressuring. He was coming forward. He was looking great. One intercepting knee. He was asleep. That is how the fight went. I remember it clear as day. So I disagree with you. In any case, I'm not saying like he had knocked him all over the place and he was 1 second away from finishing. I just mean he was looking great. He was backing him up. He was winning the minutes, and then he got kneed in the face, and the fight was over. And also, how Liam feels about Barboza losing until he wins is how I feel about Chase Hooper minus the fight against Borshev. My friend, Nick Fiore got dominated from round 1 till the end. He got battered pillar to post for 3 rounds, and he was tougher than an old leather boot. He should have gotten finished in the first round. This is what I tried to tell people why I thought Chase Hooper could hurt Slava is because he absolutely hurt Nick Fiore on the feet and had him standing TKO'd at the end of round 1. They didn't stop the fight. But Nick Fiore's just standing there going ding, 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 like a Pez dispenser. And Chase Hooper is now setting striking records over and over. Yeah, watch this space. Chase Hooper is here to play in this lightweight division. Yeah, he had to pull some out of his ass when he was 23 years old, 22 years old, fighting veterans of the game that were 32. But for me, it's just like now Chase Hooper is a man, and he's ready to party. But there you have it, guys. We've dealt with all the fights on this card. We're still going to do a little bit more research on this newly announced fight. What is it? 3 different fights that Oumar Syed had announced for this card. So he's now on his 3rd opponent. We're going to have to figure that one out a little bit in more depth, but hopefully we gave you guys some good looks. Hopefully, whether you guys are tailing, fading, or indifferent, you guys have a better perspective on the card, a little bit more information to work with. Appreciate everybody who joined the sharpest chat in the game. Thank you guys for being here. Thanks to guys like Nuke the House, Pepe, a bunch of really sharp individuals as well. So appreciate you guys for being here. A bunch of the regulars as well. Thank you guys for showing face. Appreciate you guys for your contributions. If you have more to say and you want to sound off, go ahead and comment down below, and I'll be happy to get back to you there. But Rich, why don't you tell the people where they could find you and all the great work that you're doing, brother?
Oh, yeah, I agree 100%. Leave your comments in the chat. Always enjoy reading them. Fun reads every week. That is sarcasm, by the way. Yeah, get me on Twitter. Link in the bio if you want to join my Discord and whatnot. Cost you $3. Or you can donate to this GoFundMe, $5, and then just screenshot me and I'll send you my picks for this week if you just want to do 1 week or whatever. But yeah, Barboza season, man. He's going to get fucked up. Murphy season. He's going to fuck him up, man.
Murphy season because Barboza is going to get fucked. It was just a missing conjunction there. I love it. Shout out to everybody in the chat. Appreciate you guys big time. Thank you guys for the support. I'll just let you guys know where you can find me. I will have more content later in the week. Like I said, article for Roto Grinders, ton of information already up on Patreon. All of that is down in the description box below. I have timestamps on the first look as well. So if you're looking for, my unbiased takes before I started watching tape and those kind of things, you can check that out on the first look, all timestamped for specific fights. And then aside from that, I'm going to get timestamps up on this video. Last week, I was so bad about that. I'm going to get that done for this week. Hit the like button like my guy Nuke the House says. I appreciate that. Make sure that if you're new here, hit subscribe to the show because we talk about fights each and every week on the channel. You're not going to want to miss it. And I think we're off next week from the UFC, but we've got boxing. I'm considering, I think we're like 12 or 13 comments into the 20 comments we need to do a Bellator stream. We're getting there. So we're considering talking about a bunch of other things in the world of combat this week. So if you guys have comments, suggestions, go ahead and drop those down below. But that's all we got for you today. So God bless you all. Enjoy those fights and come back next time. We're having all the same fun again. Thanks, guys. Take care, everybody.